It's time for Remodel Revolution. And now, an award-winning contractor with over 40 years' experience. Here is Alex Guthrie.
We've got a fantastic show for you today. We're going to do a product review first thing, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk foam insulation. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. I love fresh, new inventions, things that people invent to help us in our trades. And after spending my entire life in it and going from everything manual, including, but believe it or not, when I went in and started in the trades when I was a young guy, we did not have nail guns. We didn't even have reciprocating saws. We did everything by hand. And so I have had the pleasure of watching the entire genre of tools be developed, and it's always exciting to see a new one come out. And I saw this the other day, and I thought this would make a great interview, so I contacted our first guest this morning, Greg. Greg, you're going to have to tell us your last name, with Grabo.
Yes. So that's phonetically pronounced Sachdev, like a U. So
Sachdev, thank you. I really apologize. Yeah. We went over this, but I just blanked out. Sachdev.
All good. All good. It's a tricky one.
You're the sales manager at Grabo. And Grabo, tell us what Grabo is.
So Grabo is a handheld power tool. It's essentially a revolutionary powered suction cup device. So if you are familiar with any of the suction cups on the market, there is a particular sector of the market that uses various suction cups that are manually operated. This is a fully electric one. 14-volt lithium-ion battery, easily rechargeable. And this little unit here only weighs about 5 pounds, but can hold up to 375 pounds, this one single unit.
So you could put it on my head, or you could still lift me easily.
Well, I haven't met you in person. Are you?
I've got a flat spot on top of my head. It's you can't tell on camera.
All right. Well, you look relatively in shape, so I'm going to assume you're less than 375. So we'll try it out.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks for the compliment. Yeah. So this is a tool that's primarily not a retail at this point. It's not really a retail type thing. It's more of a professional's tool. Accessible, to only the professionals can access it at this point.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I guess you could get it online, right?
So listen, it's certainly accessible to the everyday or tool junkie or heavy home do-it-yourselfer. We'll certainly can provide that tool to them. But we are finding an early interest. It's only about a 2-year-old product, 2.5 years, let's call it. And we found a lot of early interest out of the stone and tile trades. Guys, especially nowadays, just dealing with a lot of guys gravitating towards large format tile. Mm-hmm. And with that large format tile is where the Grabo really comes into play. Now you can lay tile, install tile, handle that material. Obviously, it's extremely powerful. It allows you to set the tile without actually getting your fingers involved on the edges and things like that. So it saves your fingers, but it also makes the task a lot easier. Essentially, we put a tool in the hand where guys weren't even using one. A lot of stone fabrication shops, guys that cut stone, marble, granite, you name it. Very dusty environments, which the tool has proven to hold up very well in.
Now, what about things like sheetrock? Will it take a paperback product, or does it need to be something slicker?
So it actually can hang on to a porous surface. There is a certain threshold where it's just overly porous. But it can hold on cardboard if it's a very stiff cardboard, particularly if there's a surface behind it. But it does work on drywall and wood, and we're actually seeing a lot of interest right now out of the woodworking industry. One of our key social media partners is actually specifically in the woodworking trade, and we're seeing a heck of a lot of interest come out of there most recently.
Well, you mentioned large format tile, and it seems like in the last few years, size has been, there's no limit anymore to size. I mean, a large format tile when I was coming up in the industry started out at 12 by 12.
Yeah.
that was a big Adobe tile. It was at one time. And then they started, and then it was just up to maybe 24 by 24 inches. And that was a really large format tile. And of course now, I mean, I don't know of any limits to it. I see stuff that's 4 feet by 4 feet, big stuff.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend. And we are teamed up with a lot of distributors and retailers within the tile sector. And that's basically what I hear. Yeah. That's the trend that we're experiencing. And that's honestly where the Grabo comes into play quite a bit. And we're making people's jobs easier.
I would imagine setting countertops is a lot easier, and of course, we the same thing. It is large format with all this stuff: countertops, mirrors that are huge, and now we're doing a lot of big commercial windows in houses, and some of them have to be built on site, so they'll have to actually put the frame on site and carry the glass into it. So, and it's heavy stuff. And so I imagine that this is a huge advantage to people.
Absolutely.
There's probably a big safety factor.
Yeah, and absolutely. That's a good point that you bring up. And actually, one quick plug, if you will. But we're actually getting ready to launch the Grabo Pro. It's going to launch out here in August. Holding capacity is the same as the original. This is the Grabo Pro that I have in my hand. You'll notice it has a digital gauge. If you look on our website, you'll see some of our models have actually a mechanical gauge. This digital gauge allows you to work. It basically has an auto sensor feature to it, a smart feature to the device where you turn on the device. I'm not going to turn it on now because it makes a little sound. I don't want to interrupt the call here. But when it reaches sufficient adhesion to a surface like glass, it'll actually cycle off the motor, the suction motor, but the Grabo will still hang on to that surface. If at any point in time it needs to, it'll click back on. So essentially it allows you to work more efficiently without the sound, even though, again, it's not really too loud, but it also allows you to work more efficiently as far as the battery goes. So we're finding that probably the glass industry, especially with some of their OSHA requirements, they're going to take to maybe this model because of that enhanced feature safety aspect to it.
And so when I'm using this Grabo and I've got a big piece of, say, granite that's 600 or 700 pounds, and I've got a couple of these things on there, a couple of guys holding it, and I'm one of the guys holding it, is there a safety feature so that the battery just doesn't die on me and it quit holding?
So again, I would love to be able to show it to you, actually. So when you actually adhere to a piece of granite, like I said, in the Pro unit, it's actually going to cycle off for you. But if I was holding a piece of granite right now, let's call it 200-300 pounds. I often show this in demonstrations. You could probably find it on quite easy. I pop the battery out right in front of people. Material doesn't go anywhere.
It holds it.
And they're wowed. That's it. So I like to show to them, exactly in real time how it works. And you won't lose suction, won't last forever, but you have at least 45, 60 minutes conservatively, and you're going to hang on to that surface.
Oh, wow. That's
especially if it's non-porous, particularly. So that's it's really quite innovative. So if you did happen to miss the battery light indicator, you're not going anywhere. The material's not going to go anywhere.
Are there any chances when I use this that it sucks it too hard? Like, in other words, if it drew up on a piece of glass, could it crack the glass?
Yeah, good question, Alex. That is one we hear often. And the answer is yes, there certainly is. Like anything else, there are limitations to any device. But, essentially, it's not really meant to be used on a really thin piece of very lightweight glass, very fragile. We did put, if you see these 6 pads here on the bottom, at one point in time when we launched it, there was only 4. We found that adding 2 more actually allowed you to work with a lot thinner surfaces. So again, it's done very well in not having to do that. But yeah, if the surface is pliable, like maybe a piece of plastic, I wouldn't say it break it, but it does get a pretty strong adhesion on there. Could be a little difficult to release it. So you might want to be selective when you're dealing with a very thin piece of glass or plastic. But for the most part, any of the harder surfaces that our customers are working with, there's been no issue.
Do we expect to see a retail version of this coming out anytime, or is it just specifically for the trades?
So we're getting ready to launch the Pro. We have the existing model that will stay in the market for sale. There's some exciting developments happening down the pipeline. I don't want to dish too much out here.
Oh, come on, man. Nobody.
but-
Hey, we're not going to tell anybody. Just go ahead and.
Yeah, but there will be some interesting developments in the months ahead, and certainly by 2022 that will allow, hopefully, some of your more everyday workers, tool junkies, guys that to get in on various models of our tools. We have accessories coming out. We have a slender seal for kind of thinner pieces of glass or piping and things like that. So there's a lot that can actually pop on. Actually, let me pop this off to you while I have you.
Oh, that's
this is a
interesting.
patented foam rubber seal. A lot of this is how we make the magic happen. Right here. It's really easy to pop in and out. As you see, there's no glue. You pop it in and out by yourself. It stays in there nicely. And essentially
it pulls the material up against that, I assume. So that, okay.
It does. Yeah. So that's a hard rubber there with some pattern to it, some texture to it, and a rubber seal. And it basically sucks down. It allows you to mold. If you notice, it allows you to mold over textured surfaces. One of the things that's amazing about the Grabo is that it can hold on to rough concrete, tiles, even steel check plate. So it really can mold on the surface. And that's really one of the things that differentiates it from any other cup on the market, manual or otherwise. So it's pretty incredible, this little thing, what it can do. These are very inexpensive. They've held up very well in the market. We haven't really had a need to, too many of our customers haven't had a need to replace them, but we always have them available. They're quite inexpensive.
Well, I'm really impressed because I love new technology, and I love how it's getting integrated into the things that we used to. We have the old suction cups that the guys put on the glass, and they pump it up with their thumb, and I know they work fine. Those things work great, but I've had suction cups that didn't help. We've all had, anybody that's used suction cups for something has had a suction cup that just, it didn't hold. It can be holding something on your windshield or somewhere, and you're like, okay, there's got to be a better way.
Well, this is it. This is the better way, Alex.
Yeah. Well, I can see
it
this.
Truly is.
I can see this technology getting more, morphing into a much broader array of things, and so I really am very impressed with your innovation and your thought process going into this. So, wow, what a great product.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we're very excited about its potential. We're just scratching the surface with it. Like I said, we penetrated the stone and tile industry initially. Right off the bat, those guys we essentially put a tool in their hands where they didn't have one.
Right.
And we're finding a lot of other industries. A lot of our customers are actually creating accessories for the Grabo.
Very interesting.
Right here, you'll see 4 steel eyelets, and they've created different types of accessory. We actually have an accessory we're getting ready to launch for like tile and stone that's on the ground. Save your back a little bit, works nicely with it. It'll actually turn the buttons on and off.
An accessory that has an arm and 2 legs.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, get to work on that, man. And I want 10%.
Yeah.
Greg, thank you so much, and thanks for introducing your product to us, and we wish you really, really great success with it. And keep in touch with me when all these accessories start coming out. We'll run some more product reviews for you.
Exactly. Thanks so much. And the last thing I want to say is, anybody that might be watching this, we always are interested in teaming up with other distribution partners and retail outlets that have a place for the Grabo. So please reach out to me, Greg. You can find me easily, and Greg at grabo.com, or call our main line, and love to chat.
Okay, buddy. Thank you so much.
Alrighty.
Have
Thanks,
a great
Alex.
day. It's good to see your product. Good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk foam insulation. Imagine this, a totally customized, organized, and beautiful master closet. A home office that fits right into a perfect space. A pantry designed specifically for your storage needs. Imagine your home totally organized. It's time to call the design professionals at Closets by Design DFW and turn your dreams into a reality. With a design staff over 30 strong, Closets by Design works directly with you to create your dream space, and they build it locally, helping support the DFW community. Check them out at dallas.closetsbydesign.com or call them at 972-361-0010. Use the promo code RRV to find out about the amazing specials and discounts available. That's dallas.closetsbydesign.com or call them at 972-361-0010. And don't forget that promo code RRV, Closets by Design. Last week we talked about insulation and blowing insulation into attics. And I saved this next segment for a special person. I wanted somebody that actually knew a lot more about it than I do, and that is foam insulation. I've had a lot of experience with foam being done correctly, but I've also had some experience with foam being done incorrectly and some of the pitfalls that can happen when people get talked into using it in the wrong situation. So our next guest is the market division president of Texas Insulation, and Abe Neveraz, and we are going to talk foam insulation. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Alex.
Yeah,
My pleasure.
It's good to have you here. Now, I talked last week about blowing in insulation and some of the things that I don't like about some insulation. Like I talked about rock wool and why I don't like rock wool. I don't like it because what it's made from mostly and what it can do when it gets in your lungs. But our new building now, the way we're building houses with foam, a lot of foam, it has really changed the dynamics of the interior of a house. But it's got to be done right.
Yes.
And if it's done wrong, it can be an absolute disaster.
That's correct.
Okay, so let me get this over here where I can hear you a little better. There you go. There you go.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Thanks. So you speak softly. You must have kids.
I have 4 children and a wife.
So you speak softly, but you know how to growl.
I sure do.
Yeah, you got a growler down there with 4 kids.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about your foam insulation. There's 2 different kind of foams.
Yeah, so basically the most commonly used terms is open cell, closed cell foam.
And so let's discuss what that is.
Okay, so open cell foam is what's most commonly used in our region. Closed cell foam is most commonly used up north in different climate zones.
This is because of warm versus cold.
Exactly.
Or what we're trying to, like we always tell people, we're down here, we're battling the cold, the hot, and up north, you're battling the cold.
That's correct. So there are different climate zones throughout the country. Ours is a warm climate here in Dallas, here in Texas. So open cell is the most common product used here, although we do use closed cell in metal buildings, wine rooms, crawl spaces.
So closed cell
seems
to me would be something that is a lot denser, and so there's probably a different reason that you would use it, maybe in addition to an insulation value.
Correct. So closed cell has a couple other attributes that open cell doesn't have, meaning, so they're both good insulators, they're both air barriers, but closed cell gives you, it's also a moisture barrier, vapor barrier, and it also gives you structural strength. So
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so those are a couple added benefits to using a closed cell versus an open cell.
But for the purpose of just insulation and air infiltration. One of the things that I love about foam is that you get both. But there's certain times when you have a much better benefit in a residence than other times. And one is the thickness of the wall.
Correct.
Okay, explain that. Is foam something good to use in a 2x4 wall? That's the question.
Yes, foam is definitely a great insulator, but it's also an air barrier all by itself, which no other product on the market is. Okay, so some of the benefits there, I'll give you an example. If you have a 2x6 wall construction, any other product, you have to fill the cavity full per code because it's not an air barrier. So the drywall would be your air barrier. Spray foam, you're allowed to maybe put 3.5 inches of foam in that same cavity, and it performs just as well or better as if you had filled the cavity with any other product.
And so there's an R value. Explain it to us, the R value of foam versus, say, fiberglass bats.
Well, as far as R value goes, there's some similarities, meaning so they're both about a 3.8 per inch R value. So you're not necessarily gaining R value when you switch to foam. What you're gaining is a better airtight, a better air seal, because the product itself is an air barrier. It's applied as a liquid, and it expands into any little crevices, anything that you have on the exterior shell.
In air infiltration, as we've learned over the years by even some of our more horrible mistakes we made building houses in the 70s where we put plastic and we did it for the same reason. For the most part, we were trying to create an air barrier because our houses, explain to us how our houses leak air from the outside typically.
Well, there's a lot of ways for houses to leak. We call them leaky houses. But the idea is that every house has what we call air changes per hour, right? So the more air changes per hour the home has, the leakier the house is. So the idea is to try to minimize the air changes per hour. And what that means is how many times does the inside air of your home get replaced with outside air, right? So again, the leakier the house, the more times the air changes happen.
in old houses, the houses I grew up remodeling that were built out of wood, wood walls, floors, everything was wood. And I was just like being on the outlet. We didn't even have air conditioning, I mean, what can I say? So, been around a while. And so that air exchange was no big issue back then. I mean, it was what it was, right? And every time you open the door or a window, and people don't do a whole lot of window opening anymore, but every time you open a door, you bring in, you have a little air exchange right there.
Correct.
But nowadays we have these houses that we just live in. We shut the door, or we may, right now when it's about 100 or 100 degrees every day, like it is this time of year, you may not go outside unless you just have to, right? So
Yes.
You're sitting inside this house. It's got foamed walls. It might have might be totally encapsulated in foam, and you have to have some air exchange.
Correct.
What happens if you don't?
Well, every newer houses now do have ventilation, but it's mechanical. It's brought in through the HVAC system, through your furnace. So what you want is the exchange to be mechanically done. It's controlled. How many air changes per hour? Again, having too much unwanted air from the outside, that brings in pollutants from the outside. If you have allergies.
And if you don't have enough air exchange, you have unwanted air on the inside, from the inside, from us.
Correct.
Because we're all full of you-know-what, and it floats around in the air, and eventually it catches up with you.
Correct. So I think that the important part is for people to understand that there's several components. Your home, we look at it as a system, and there's multiple components that work together to make it perform efficiently. Ventilation happens to be one of those components that we look at.
Now, one of the things I really wanted to talk to you about today is I've heard we've all heard horror stories about foam gone wrong. It ain't the foam, it's the installation of the foam. there's certain places that certain houses in particular, particularly really old houses, you don't want foam. The house isn't built. So what Abe was talking about the system of the house, if the house is built, or if you're doing an addition, and you build the addition to be foamed, then fine. What that means is you address all these air leakage issues from the outside, moisture leakage issues from the outside, roof leakage issues, because you don't want that foam getting wet. That's the main thing. And not because it's going to hurt the foam, because it won't dry out and you start having mold and rot issues if you have water leakage into it.
That's correct. So there's a lot of different possibilities that could happen if you use a contractor that doesn't pay attention to the house as a system.
So if somebody has now I've been addressing this a lot lately because this happens a lot of times when we have certain conditions in the economy and in the building environment where a lot of people go off the books and start deciding they want to start their little business. Mm-hmm. I see it all the time. All builders, all contractors do. And there's plenty of homeowners out there that are going to, kind of be a sucker for that cheap price. And they'll call me and they'll go, hey, I've talked to some guy came in here and he said that we need to foam the attic. Let's just, Alex, I know you're telling me to blow in fiberglass or whatever, but I want to foam it because that sounds really cool. Let's just foam that seal. And I go, no, there's a whole lot of things that you have to consider before you start completely changing how your house is insulated.
That's very true.
Let's have your advice on that.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, you have to look at the house as a system, right? So one of the first things that we would do when we show up to a project is learn the project, ask a lot of questions. When was the project built? The building built? Has there been any issues, fires, leaking, anything going on? Is there access to do foam? But one of the main things that we always look at is the HVAC system because that has a direct correlation with the insulation. You're going from a typical vented attic system to a non-vented system, and that really changes the dynamics of how the systems work, how the components work together.
How the components work, particularly the ones that use heat.
Correct.
Or gas,
Yeah,
natural
heat,
gas.
Exactly. So I always recommend before you do spray foam, you have to involve a professional HVAC contractor in the conversation because going from a vented to a non-vented system is going to impact the house as a whole. A couple things that could happen is all of a sudden your house is more efficient, so your unit is oversized, and that creates what we call short cycling. It means it cools the house so fast, but it doesn't run long enough to draw the humidity out of the air.
Which is one of the keys to air conditioning, to a modern air conditioning system is, like Abe is saying, it's a system and the house is a system. We've gone from a house being basically like we built them 100 years ago, which was stick frame walls and ceiling and the air comes in, the air goes. We weren't thinking about all that stuff. And then all of a sudden we put these forced air systems in and we're forcing this cold, moist air into this environment that's got to control that because we found in the 80s and 90s. Now, we started putting central air in houses in the early 80s, before you were born, when I was a young guy. And it was a big deal, but we didn't know anything about it. We're just putting it in there. And people would say, I want to be able to hang meat in my living room, man. I want that baby cold in the middle of August, man. I want a shiver. And I'd go, and the AC guy would say, sure, man, I'll just throw an extra couple of tons of air in there. Don't you even worry about that. Well, he didn't know.
Right. They didn't know any better.
And guess what happens about 5 or 6 years later? Hey, man, I got this mold everywhere, and my system's not working. There's water dripping off my lights.
Yes. We actually see that a lot.
Sure you do, because we put in insulated windows that when I was a young guy, we didn't have insulated windows. We added storm windows, and we created insulated windows. You know, the only people that had double pane glass were commercial windows. We didn't have them in residential. Anyway, all of this evolved over time to where now we're building these really efficient homes. And by efficient, what we mean is maybe foamed walls, maybe a foam rafters or attic floor, and then they're built on top of a slab. But if you happen to have a pier and beam, and particularly if it's an older house, be very careful about foaming underneath it. There's a certain way to do it that's right. And trust me, I've gone under them and they're completely rotted out because even bat insulation, any kind of insulation under a pier and beam house, be very, very careful how you do that. Anyway, that's a whole nother show. And so our discussion about to our homeowners that are watching this, and somebody that comes in and wants to just kind of willy-nilly add foam.
One of the main things I would tell a homeowner is know who you're dealing with. Make sure it's a reputable contractor. Make sure you can get some references. They can provide, other jobs that they've done. If they're not asking you all these questions, like I mentioned earlier, checking the HVAC system, inspecting the attic, you'll know right away. If somebody shows up and says, "Oh yeah, let's just foam the attic," you probably don't want to do business with that person. They might not know what they're doing.
You're making a major change, and it's an environmental change, so it could be dangerous. And so you have to really think through these things. I really appreciate you coming in today. I really do.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been really a lot of fun having you here. And so, folks, if you have any questions, give these guys a call. And they're a fantastic company, and they're actually a national company. They've got offices in Dallas and Houston and Texas. Do you have any more in Texas?
We're going to expand here over the next couple of years is the plan. We'll have locations in Austin, San Antonio.
Fantastic,
yes,
fantastic. That's great. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back with another segment of Remodel Revolution. It's only a few short weeks until we'll be running our air conditioners all day and all night. Hey, it's time to get an HVAC tune-up scheduled. Call my friends at Total Air and Heat in Plano, Texas at 972-881-0020 right now and get on their schedule for a tune-up. Don't wait for the long lines. Get ahead of the crowd. Total Air has been servicing North Dallas and Plano and Richardson areas for over 60 years. Steve and Justin Lawton sell and service Carrier brand heating and cooling systems with Green Speed Intelligence technology. So give them a call at 972-881-0020 or contact them at totalair.com. Well, this time of year, it starts getting to project time on your house. And so the next few weeks, we're going to talk about different types of projects that are good homeowner type projects, safe projects, and fairly easy to do. One of what I want to talk about today is caulking and sealing your walls from air infiltration. These are things that you can do yourself, and I want to just give you some tips on the do's and don'ts, some of the do's and don'ts, and some advice on if you plan to do that. Now, what's driving me to this discussion is that for the next 12 days in our weather forecast, we have 100 plus degrees forecast. And that's the actual temperature. The field temperature is, always 5 or 6 degrees higher than that. So we're getting into some pretty serious discomfort, I should say. And one of the things that happens is that you're running your air conditioner, of course, really literally almost 24 hours a day. And so you want to tighten up that envelope of the building, the envelope of your house as much as you can to save money. And when you're, one of the things that you need to understand is when your air conditioning is running and your return air is running, you're creating a negative pressure in the house. So it's trying to draw air out of the attic. It's trying to draw air out of the walls. It's trying to draw air through windows and doors. And so I thought this would be a great time to talk to you about how to sort of mitigate some of that air infiltration that's inevitable, really, and particularly if your house is more than 15 or 20 years old. And so the first thing I want to talk about is caulk. And that's the first thing people ask me about is caulking around doors and windows. And caulking is a great way and an inexpensive way to deal with air infiltration because you're essentially, of course, you're just kind of filling a gap with this liquid that gets hard and prevents air from coming in, and dust. One of the things that you'll see this time of year is you'll start to see a bunch of dust everywhere. And that, again, is because you're running that air conditioner so much, it's sucking it out of the walls, it's sucking it out of the attic, it's sucking it through little holes in the, around the windows and doors. And so caulking is the first line of defense, I would say. So let's talk a little bit about caulking. First of all is caulk removal. If you have old caulk, and I know a lot of us see this around our tubs and showers, and it gets some black mold in it, and it gets kind of ugly and gross and yellow, and maybe starts peeling back a little bit, and you're thinking, man, I need to add some caulk there. Well, if you want it to work, you have to remove the old caulking first. And so it's fairly simple. You don't always have to pull it all the way out of the crack. It's best if you do, but if you can take a utility knife or any number of tools that you can get at the box stores that'll help you remove that and dig that old caulk out of there, even if it's on the outside of your house around windows. If you can pull that old silicone caulk, it's real rubbery. It's just like pulling a big old rubber band out, and get that out of there. That is the best thing to do. Then you're going back with a fresh new application that fills those gaps and keeps the air and the dust from coming in. In the case of if you're doing around a bathroom in particular, you want to dig that old caulk out of there if it's got mold in it, because the new caulk won't stick very well to the mold. And I know that we all have this issue. If there's water and soap and humans, there's going to be some mold in the corners. That's just how it is. So let's talk a little bit about, we talked about removing the caulk, and then there's some tricks to putting the new caulk back in, but it has a lot to do with the type of caulk that you're using. So there's a water-based or water-soluble caulking, which is the old kind of caulking that we used before everything was full of silicone and acrylics. The old type caulking, which you still get, is water-based, which means you can clean it with warm water. And I wouldn't use soap so much, but just you can, when you get the bead of caulk in there, you can take a damp rag and pull it over that and smooth that out. And remember that the way that you finish it is the way it's going to end up looking. So you want to maybe practice a little bit and get sort of proficient at removing that excess caulking in the corner, so you don't have this big gunky globby line of caulk that looks like you did it in the dark. And a lot of them do, and it doesn't look good. So if it's in your bathroom or if it's around your windows, then you kind of want to make sure it's cleaned up and looks good. So practice a little bit before you do it so you can clean that caulk out of there really good. So you have, when we're talking about different kinds of caulks, we're talking about the water-based, which is, I call it a typical caulk. And then we've got the silicone and the acrylic caulks. Now, some caulk, when you're buying it to put on the outside of your house, you need to make sure that if you're going to paint it, that you get a caulk that is paintable, because they make caulk that is not paintable. And so if you're going to say repaint around the window after you caulk it, that's great. Make sure that you've got a product out there that the paint will stick to. If it doesn't, the paint's going to just peel off like old, onion skin. So you don't want to use that. And also, there's a whole different way of applying it to get that nice clean line that you're looking for. And trust me, this stuff can get so messy and so yucky that you, again, try it and learn how to do it and get a system put together, where you're comfortable getting that excess caulk off of there cleanly. And so that was kind of what I wanted to touch on with caulking. It's not as simple as it used to be because of the variety of products that they have. They also have a variety of colors. And so you have a lot of options. And if you're buying it at the paint store, which I recommend, talk to the salesman about making sure you have the proper product for what you're trying to do. Now, let's talk about another thing that you can do to seal some of that air coming from the inside of the house. And that is these little foam gaskets. So your light switches and plug outlets all leak air. I don't care I don't care what they are, unless they've had a gasket put around them or they've been somehow sealed, they are leaking air. So when your air conditioning comes on and it starts drawing air in back through the system and putting a pull on that air, it's pulling air through those. And a lot of times you can look at a wall, particularly in an older home, and you can see a dark gray or kind of dusty looking shadow around these plug switches or switch plates and outlet covers. Oftentimes around a light, oftentimes around an air conditioning vent that's in the ceiling. You'll see a little dusty area around it. That's where it's pulling that dust out of the system, and it's just sticking there on the wall. So you'll know that you're having this issue. And this is affecting everything inside your house. So it's sucking that dust out. It's broadcasting it everywhere, on top of your furniture, in your carpet, in your furniture, seats. And so you want to try and prevent that. And also, you don't want to air condition it. You want to it's also going back into your system. It's going through the filter, and the filter doesn't pick up. It gets put on stuck to the coils, and the coils get dirty and blah, blah, blah. And it's just this whole nightmare scenario. So one of the things that you can do that's very, very helpful is you can get these nice little foam gaskets that will go over a switch, and then you put the switch cover back on. And if the gasket doesn't fit quite perfect around it, you can take a little razor blade and you can cut it out so it fits really tight. You can get these little gaskets for plug outlets, and you can get them for switch covers. You can get them for if you have a multiple bank of switches, 3 or 4 or 5 switches on one bank. You can get these little gaskets that'll fit over that entire bank. And remember that wherever you see that switch or that plug outlet, that's a hole in your wall. And that is a hole into an empty cavity that is the wall cavity. And that thing has got who knows what. Even from construction, it's got dust and dirt and all kinds of debris laying in it, and you never know what's coming into your house. So this is a really good way to deal with that. Now, let's talk about, keeping that same thought in mind, your recessed cans in your ceiling. When you have recessed cans in your ceiling, and your air conditioning turns on, it is sucking attic air into your house unless they've been sealed. Now, a lot of cities require that we use a sealed can now, which is great. It's not the can itself that's the problem, it's the trim that you see that's sitting on the sheetrock. Because if you pull usually a little plastic trim, and if you pull that little piece of plastic trim down, you can see literally up into your attic. And so that's the problem, and that's where all the dust and the musty smell and the attic smell and all that's coming from. But there's a way to deal with that. One is you can get gaskets for those little rings, and that little gasket will go up under that ring, and it'll seal up where that air is coming through, and that'll really help that. But the other thing you can get is a can cover. Now, in an older home, you might have recessed cans that are not sealed. You probably have recessed cans that aren't sealed. But you can actually get a light cover that goes in the attic, and you can get a square one, you can get a round one. They're pretty common. We used to make them out of cardboard because we couldn't actually go and buy them, but now you can. So if you put that cover over that light, that'll really, really help in a lot of ways. Now, also that cover in the attic over the light is going to help if you're going to re-insulate. You want to make sure that your insulator, and most of them are really good about this, puts a cover over that can. If you don't, it won't be able to control the heat of that light fixture, and that light fixture will start cutting on and off because it has a little thermal coupling in it that tells it when it's too hot, and when it gets too hot, it turns off so it doesn't start a fire. And so you can put the can covers in the attic, you can put the gasket underneath under the trim and seal that up pretty darn good, and that'll make a huge difference in your comfort level. So let's talk about attic stairs. And if you have a set of attic stairs that you reach up and you pull down, the pull down attic stairs that maybe is in the hallway, those things leak tons and tons of attic air into your house. They're just not sealed very good if they're old. The newer ones are a lot better, and if you'll go to Remodel Revolution on our YouTube channel, I'm about to put a video up of some that I found that are really, really good. They're efficient. They've got foam. They're sealed. They're really good. But we're talking right now about the old ones. One of the best things to use for those is foam. It's sticky backed foam weather stripping. It comes in a roll. It's cheap, and if you'll just take the time to put that around that door, so when it closes against that foam, you can make a huge difference in the comfort of your house and in the smell. And that's the main thing. I'll walk in houses all the time, and I will smell musty attic air, and I know immediately that they've got air leakage issues around lights or maybe an attic stair. So these are just some tips I wanted to throw your way today because it's going to get hot. You're going to be looking for ways to deal with all this dust and stuff that's going to be showing up everywhere because your air conditioner is going to be running 24 hours a day. They do literally do that in some houses, or even 10 or 12 hours a day. And we want to make it not only more efficient, but we want to get that, control the dust and the other things that happen when that happens. So thank you so much for being with us today. Those are our tips. Remember, you can always send me an email, make a comment on Facebook or YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions or anything you want me to do a show about, let me know. If you have something bugging you about a remodel project you're doing, you need answers, feel free to contact me. And this is Alex Guthrie signing off. Until next week, thanks for being here. Hey, don't forget to follow us on all your social media, like us on Facebook, subscribe and share on YouTube, and check us out on all your social media platforms. Don't forget to watch Remodel Revolution on your smart TV on Texas Weather Tracker TV.
The views and opinions of this program are for educational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended to replace the recommendations of a hired professional. You can catch Remodel Revolution anytime. Follow the show on the website, remodelrevolutionradio.com, or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, using the handle @Remodel Revolution Radio. You can always listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn, and watch the show anytime on YouTube.